Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Amber Campion. She's a yoga teacher, breathwork facilitator, and poet. Please enjoy Amber Campion. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I am here with Amber Campion. She is a yoga teacher, breathwork facilitator, and poet. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mari.
I'm so excited to chat with you today. But before we dive into our creativity adventures, if you would just take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, who I am, my name is Amber. I currently reside in Reno, Nevada, but I spent most of my creative life in New York City. I also spent a couple of years in Nicaragua and a couple of years in Santa Cruz, California, so a bit of a nomad. And for 16 years now, I have been a yoga and mindfulness teacher. I started doing breathwork facilitating, even though as a yoga teacher, you are always guiding people through breathwork, but specifically really diving deep into breathwork and doing somatic breathwork healing, rituals and experiences. I started that just over a year ago, and I'm loving it. And I have been writing poetry since I was 12.
My gosh, how fantastic. I love that. That's awesome. And what type of yoga is your yoga teacher? Are you a yoga teacher of? That made no sense.
I loved it though. So I used to train something called capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art. So years ago, I got this idea to blend the two, and really because I found that I was getting so much out of what we do in capoeira, in this martial art, and so much out of yoga. And I often felt like, gosh, I wish capoeiristas had the tools that I have from yoga. And I wish that yogis could learn more about capoeira. And I created something called yogaera, which I don't teach anymore, but it was a combination of where I basically bring some of the strength training, just some of the, we'll just say the magic from capoeira into a traditional flow style, vinyasa style class. So that's kind of the beginning of where I started to develop my own practice. But I even made a DVD. So that was out in the world for a while when those things existed. But over the years, as my practice developed and as I grew, I really wanted to be more accessible. And yogaera really speaks to a certain type of person. And it was also, it was in my 20s when I put that out in the world. And so I was really into arm balances and handstanding. So it's just a much more physical practice. And now I developed and teach something. I even teach a teacher training called Boundless. And it's called Dynamic Release Flow or Dynamic Release Method. And it's very much like a flow style class, but we move very, very slow, much like you're doing Qigong. So it's about really softening the joints while strengthening the core so that you can access the subtle body. And then we always end doing self-myofascial release with tennis balls, which is incredible and also accesses this energy, subtle body, which can really tap into our deeper source of healing. And just, even using it for creativity. People will find when we get stuck in our body, our issue in our tissues, it can really close us off from our creative self-expression. And so, it's used for a lot of different things, from just maintaining our well-being to opening up our creative faculties with more depth.
Nice. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I would benefit from doing more of that. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I love it.
Stuff.
And it absolutely, when our physical body's holding tension and releasing, there is that space for something to
Yeah.
arise, and why not creativity? So I love that
So well,
piece.
I love the way you said that. I even love the way you slowed down and got really embodied. It is exactly that. When we drop into our bodies from our neck down and we land, like actually land here, it's incredible what can emerge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I am a dance movement therapist, somatic therapist.
Ah,
So yes,
yeah.
just to give you some context from where I'm
That's
coming
why you were
from.
so eloquent with that. I was like, wow, she just nailed that.
Had some practice, but I love all of these pieces. And I'm so curious about kind of the creativity that shows up for you in it and your life. But
Mm.
before we get there, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Mm. Well, I think the first, I put my hand on my heart. The first thing that comes up for me is courage. I feel to be creative is to be daring, right? Because for us to be creative, we have to be willing to be vulnerable in honor of being true, true to ourselves, true to the still small voice that's calling us forward, true to our curiosities. It's also something that comes up for me is creativity is a verb, it's an action, right? So it's actually bringing something meaningful to you and hopefully to others into existence. So it's actually taking action. It's not really a state of being, in my opinion, as much as it is the willingness to be daring, the willingness to be brave, the willingness to follow our curiosities in honor of creating something that feels true and beautiful to you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It just sounds like there was so much creativity creating your, authentic yoga practice and the breath work and the myofascia pieces that you've been talking about, like so much creativity. I'm just hearing it as you're talking and like piecing things together. I love all of that. When you kind of create a yoga flow, what style, like what creativity supports you in that?
Great question. Well, when I'm, for instance, a lot of times, especially now, because I've been teaching so long, all I do before a class is really come up with a theme, like a Dharma talk.
Yeah.
And then from that space, now at this point, and when I was first starting to teach, it's not the way, and the practice will just flow from me. Though when I am in that place where, I'm like, okay, I want to plan a little bit more. I really want to work with a certain body part and think about the structure of that. I get embodied first. So I do it myself. So I will come up with, there might be like one creative thing that I was playing with a block or a body part. And so it's a lot of self-exploration. I also love, I'm been practicing for more than 16 years, teaching for 16 years, and I'm still very much a student, very much and always will be a student of my craft. So I'm always taking classes from other yoga teachers, and especially virtually these days, which I actually think is a blessing because some of my teachers from New York City who never offered stuff virtually that I really got a lot of inspiration from are now doing things virtually. So, and what often happens is I'll be having a practice with a teacher that I'm really inspired by, and they'll do just one little thing that I'm like, wow, my class is going to be based off that one little thing now,
Yeah. Those
so
little sparks.
That's a lot of, and then of course, Qigong, it's interesting in my history of martial arts, Qigong isn't like a huge part of my practice. I did capoeira for 7 years, mixed martial arts, and definitely sprinkled of Qigong here and there. But for some reason, Qigong in particular really has a lot of inspiration and a dynamic release flow. It's very, again, it's like, I'll say like move through the postures, move into the postures, and from posture to posture, much like you're moving through thick salt water, which is very much when you do Qigong, what it feels like. And it's this softening of the joints, and it really allows for you to slow down and elongate the breath. And as you do that over, even just a couple minutes, but certainly after 60 minutes, 75 minutes, you really tap into this other level
Yeah.
of awareness and presence in your body. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible how the practice itself feels when we slow down and move in that way, but also the healing and the insight and the unfolding that happens for those who are more consistent with it.
Yeah. I'm just hearing you talk. It really reminds me of kind of being in that creative flow state when people, you like lose track of time. It's just so present moment, embodied, slowed down, and you're just doing it for the pure joy and experience of it.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's like. You just made me think one of my favorite things about teaching this style of practice, which this year is the first time I'm ever teaching other teachers to teach it. So it's pretty interesting to be wrapping my brain around how to teach other teachers to teach dynamic release flow. And with that being said, one of my favorite things is watching students' faces as they really start to, okay, let me soften my joints a little bit here. Let me really bring my awareness to my deep core muscles, but then soften my joints. And what would I be moving like if I was moving through thick salt water, and seeing this deep relaxation simultaneously with this incredible presence just wash over their face. I love it. It's incredible. And it has this incredible impact on me as a teacher as well, where I often leave the class feeling like, I don't do the practice. I walk around and very much facilitate to what's in front of me. And I feel, though, at the end of the practice, like I practiced.
Yeah. It's that mirror or the vicarious experience that we as facilitators have. I love that as well. Yay. Well, I imagine not every day is as smooth and easy as it may sound right now. Well, how do you face those creative challenges when they arise?
With a lot of compassion, first and foremost. I mean, again, like my first answer was I believe creativity is to be daring. And so anytime we are human beings willing to be daring, we have to bring a big dose of compassion with us along that road. Otherwise, we're going to train our nervous system that every time we step out of our comfort zone, we're unsafe. And so we shouldn't do that anymore. So just a lot of compassion. I talk a lot about with my students something called the itty bitty shitty committee, which is basically your inner critic.
I love it.
And if you dare to put something out into the world, and for me too, this is a broad spectrum. It could be something like, a business, a program, a book, a painting, a song, but it can also be daring to create a family, daring to create a home, right? Daring to recreate your life. So all of that is creativity to me. And again, all of it takes a certain amount of daring. And there's no doubt, though, when someone's moving forward in that direction, they're going to have the itty bitty shitty committee, right? They're going to have, and I say that just with so much humor, because really this orchestra, this committee of voices telling us we're getting it wrong, doing it wrong. And if you have no compassion for yourself along that journey, those voices will win. Yeah, they will win. And so having support systems, other people who are also daring to be creative, that can, give you another voice, another perspective, so that you can start to develop the inner leader and not just have the itty bitty shitty committee. So that when you feel like you're messing up, or it's not as inspiring as you want it to be, or it feels crunchy, you don't just give up in that point. So that's a big piece. And then the other thing for me too is just, as a creative, I've really, really over the years had to embrace structure for me to, which I think a lot of times with artists, creators, it's like structure, screw that, I need to be, spontaneously inspired and in the flow. And that's when I create. But embracing structure and support, as I said before, has really allowed for me to express more fully with more depth and more honesty. And so I am a lover of the Google Calendar. It allows me to reverse engineer. Like, for instance, leading a 200-hour yoga teacher training takes so much innovation, so much creativity. While there's a structure of things I need to bring to the table, I'm also teaching students how to do a practice that I developed.
Yeah.
I also bring, it's a yoga teacher training plus a mindfulness-based leadership program. So I'm weaving in different elements of the training, weaving in how to teach a specific style, plus staying within the realm of what is required. And that took so much creativity, but so much structure as well. And I really needed to reverse engineer that, like go to the end game and then reverse that. And without my Google Calendar, and there was a day when I didn't have that, not much got done, especially not in the big crowd, and then, I can't not say this just because of who I am, but when I get myself up against challenges, I move, I breathe, breath work, yoga is such a powerful tool for creatives.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I'm hitting a challenge, it's just, I'm in a rut. I have shot up into my head. I'm no longer in my body. And my body is such a force for my creativity and my sanity. And so, getting in my body, moving. And I really don't think, it's not like it has to be yoga.
Right.
That's my pathway, but anything, going for a walk, a jog, getting in my body and really breathing.
Yeah. The breathing piece. It's, if we think of inspiration as breathing, we're breathing in and breathing out. It's inspiring.
Yeah. There you go. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You just have to breathe. I love it.
Yep.
I'm going to take a bit of a turn. I'm so curious, seeing as how you have this very creative expression and experience and embodied life. What's your earliest memory of being creative?
Oh gosh, I have this interesting memory. So my guess is I'm around 6 years old. I'm big enough that I can invite people into my yard. I'm not so little that I have friends that I can invite over, but I'm little enough that here's the memory. So I got this idea to invite some neighborhood friends. There's this street, and go to the neighborhood and invite some people over, some other young people over. And in my yard, I was going to direct, produce, and act in. So all three: direct it, produce it, and also act in this play. But I remember I told these young kids, like my friends, I didn't say all that, like, hey, do you want to come over where I'm going to direct and produce and act in a play with you? I just asked them to come over and play in my yard. And my dad had built us like a playground, so everyone just thinks they're coming over to play. But I do remember somehow like having it all happen and coming up with some kind of play and parts for everyone. And then the production part was I then went and had all of my actors go to their homes to tell their parents and their siblings that they can pay $1 to come see our show.
I love
and it
it.
happened, and a handful of people came over. I mean, who knows how much it was, and then we all split the money, but it was probably like we each walked away with $0.25 or something. But I really remember that and feeling very creative, very empowered, and also just recognizing, maybe like at the time I wasn't thinking like, wow, but really when I look back at that, the beginning of me stepping into that place of leadership, really like taking action and being the one who was like, I'm going to create something and I'm going to get people involved and I'm going to teach them how we're all going to make money here.
Yeah. The visionary behind it all.
Yeah.
I love these stories from childhood, or just those first memories, because I think they hold so much wisdom for us. And like, how do we get to incorporate that into our adulthood too? And it sounds like you do with the stuff, the world that you have created for yourself now, leading yoga teacher trainings and having that leadership aspect and how much creativity goes into it. I love it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, is like, I'm definitely not someone that was like, I've always known since I was a little kid that I was going to get into well-being or yoga or writing or anything like that. It's just those, strangely enough, those things were my tools for healing. Like they found me. Writing poetry was, I started that at 12 as a healing tool. Of course, I didn't like cognitively know what I was doing, but it was how I was dealing with some trauma in my life at that time.
Yeah.
And then same with yoga, breath work, the whole wellness world. I discovered that in New York City in my early 20s. I'd actually moved to New York City for a creative reason. I wanted to be a photographer, but ultimately I ended up being completely steered down into the healing arts, which was never something. So it was really me following my curiosity and following the things that had really impacted my life.
Yeah.
You know, and for the longest time, definitely suffered with that imposter syndrome. Took years and years and years to get over that, because it wasn't like I consciously, actively was like, here. It's just I kept following the breadcrumbs of my curiosity, and it slowly started to unfold that this became not only something that I do in my life, my lifestyle, but became the way that I give and serve, and and really my main source of creative expression.
Nice. Yeah. I really see creative arts and healing arts, they're, same sides of a coin. They go together so well and influence and inform, and it's hard to imagine one without the other in my world. Yeah.
I agree. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that they intersect and overlap and are so important to each other. So I love meeting people where they've really integrated that, combination into their life. And, that idea of, I don't know if you still do photography, but if that's more of like a personal creative expression that you might not share with anyone, that still has that healing aspect.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to Instagram, right? I actually did a series. It's not too far down on my Instagram either, where it's like these black and whites. And again, it's just like my phone, and I'm like sitting in a shadow, but I'm nude, and I'm like in these like really artsy poses. So every so often I do use it again for my own self-expression. And I love photographing for other people. I'm definitely one of those people who's like at the parties taking photos, and I send them to all my friends, and they're like, you take the best photos, because I do love it, but it's not something I do for a living or anything like that. It's just a personal tool that I have that I just love, because I love people. No wonder I went into the industry I did. And that's why I was also interested in photography. I always wanted to photograph people in their having their human experiences, and photograph the depth of emotion and human experience. And so I think that same energy that was pulling me towards photography pulled me towards the healing arts. Really.
Nice. Oh, so beautiful. And I think many times people forget how important it is to fuel your own personal creativity that isn't associated with a career or a job, so you're filling up your cup, your creative cup, to then let it come out in whatever form you do share with the rest of the world. Yeah. I love it. I love all those little insight pieces, little reminders, myself included. Sometimes I forget them as well. And I'm like, why do I feel creatively depleted? Oh, right. I haven't been doing anything that I know is really helpful and important to me. Yeah. So it sounds like you have this really robust community in your life. I imagine teacher trainings, and you're talking about your teachers in New York. How do you feel your community impacts or influences your creativity?
Oh gosh, I mean, all of my creations are based around relationship, right? Relationship with others, and having an understanding, a felt understanding of what my community is going through mentally, emotionally, physically. All my Dharma talks, my poetry book that I'm working on, everything is really shaped and influenced by the times, and specifically the community in which I am serving, and the community in which I live in. And yeah. So it's a completely integral, deeply woven together process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's so, for me, community is very important as well. And I think sometimes people find it really challenging to find that community, cultivate that community, use their community as inspiration or fuel for their creative
Right.
expression and experiences. But it sounds like it's such a huge piece for you that it just is, it's alive in that way.
And, I think too, it's about, at least from my personal experiences, over the years, I've gotten to know who I am more, trust who I am, know my values, know what lights me up, know what matters to me. And the more that I've tapped into that, the more that I actually draw to me those kind of friends, those kind of lovers, those kind of students, those kind of clients. And so really it's just this interesting reflection, and sometimes it's to know what the world wants and needs. And by the world, I mean your world at this time. It's sometimes hard when we're in it as the creators, like, what's really needed. And sometimes, what I also find is when I just do find that source from myself and I present it, when I'm really tapped in and paying attention, I don't even have to check with my community. It's like, here's what's been on my mind. I wonder if it's on your mind too. And everyone's just like, whoa, but also just really staying tapped in and tuned in with my community. What's real and true for you right now? What's heavy on your heart? And, when I think about it, I think a lot of it has just been me, again, going back to that vulnerability space of being like, here's what's coming up for me around, being this age, or around my body, or around the times, right? So there's this overarching theme. And here's what's coming up for me. Do I dare talk about it with my community? And what I find is when I do dare talk about it vulnerably and honestly with my community, I can see in their eyes that they were just waiting for this conversation, for someone to bring this up. And so again, it's that daringness. And through that practice of daring to bring forth my own truth and my own heart and my own fears and my own worries and my own insecurities and my own humanness, I've learned to trust myself. And that really, that has been, to be honest, a real game changer in what I put out in the world.
It's so powerful when you actually trust yourself. It, as you said, is a game changer for sure. I love it. Oh my goodness. I feel like we could just talk and talk and talk and talk about so many things, but for people who may not feel creative, how would you encourage them to find creativity in their life?
I mean, I think I mentioned this before, it's that, I get this question a lot around purpose as well. Like, how do I find my purpose? And I find this to be the same one. How do I find or find my creativity, or find my voice, or find my purpose? And it's almost like I have this visual of like someone thinks they're just gonna like look under the bed or under the carpet and like find an earring and be like, finally I found my purpose, finally I found my self-expression. And it's not something that I think we find. I actually, ironically, it's something we create. We create our creativity, and it starts by getting curious about yourself, getting curious about what am I curious about, even if it seems totally off base, even if you're like, but I'm curious about A, but that has nothing to do at all with what I want to be in the world or something. Because I think a lot of times the mind can do that to people and be like, it doesn't make sense. But I can't tell you how many times things that, and I say this in finger quotations, didn't make sense, was a major catalyst to profound self-discovery, and then ultimately a major force and supporter of some really beautiful creative expressions that I've put out into the world. So what are you curious about? And actually go take action on it, because creativity is a verb. You've got to take action, just go. And it doesn't matter, oh, well, I tried that, nothing. You got to keep going at it, right?
Yeah, keep trying.
I really think the people we're all creatives, but the ones who were like, well, what makes it different? Like the ones that are actually doing it and putting stuff out in the world, is I find that they have really built their muscle. And notice that I'm not saying it's like something that we were just born with, but they've built that muscle called curiosity and boldly, daringly followed it again and again and again.
I love that. Boldly, daringly followed curiosity. That's such a beautiful reminder and invitation for those listening. I love it. This has been such a treat. I just have one final question for you. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Well, the word that right away came to me is alive. So I think even with that, like that courage and that daring, we feel a lot of energy moving through us. And at first it can feel like fear, like, because I think aliveness and fear can feel really similar.
Yeah.
And so it feels alive to me. And I think what can really alchemize it into like, oh my gosh, this is shutting me down. My nervous system is shutting me down. This, what you call aliveness, is just terror for me, is one, using the breath.
Yeah.
So that you can alchemize that terror into aliveness. Two, practice, right? It's, it's going to take time. I always tell people, like, for instance, with teaching, years. And I say this honestly, like probably at least 2-3 years, just, no, it wasn't exciting. It was just terror. I actually don't know why I kept at it. I'm so glad I did though, because now it just feels like life force energy, aliveness in me. But practice, breath, and then I think getting out of that shame place and not being afraid to talk about, like, I'm scared right now. Yeah, this is freaking me out. I can't say how many times in public speaking situations or teaching in yoga in the first few years where I just came out and I said, I am really nervous, and that's what I want to lead. I'm just going to start my class with letting you all know I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
All right, everyone take a deep breath, including me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has just been such a delightful conversation about creativity. Thank you so much. And if people want to learn more about the pieces, the things you have to share and offer, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can find me on Instagram. Check out my photos. And that's just Amber Campion, my name, at Amber Campion. I'm on Facebook as well, but I really focus more on Instagram. I have some videos on YouTube. I actually have some different practices there as well. And then I have my website, which is ambercampion.com. And on the website, there's different gifts. And some of, like, one of them, if they scroll down, is called a 5-day embodiment experience. And I take people through these 5 different days where we do breath work, we do asana, these different things to keep the channel open, which is really about creativity, to keep the channel of creativity open.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, I will put all of that into the show notes so people can access it very easily. And thank you again for taking the time to chat with me about creativity. It's been awesome.
Well, thanks for being so lighthearted and easy to talk to.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.